You are watching
How
Xirtus.
about, okay, so much of this is convoluted. The university situation is convoluted. Ukraine is convoluted as far as Israel goes. So, like, in the past, when they've had, I forget all the particulars. I had a walkthrough at one point from a close friend of mine who has been following this for years and years and years. Ukraine up in it, the diplomatic issues surrounding Ukraine going back. Like, right now, I'm trying to educate myself on what happened, like, at least from 2014 onward when we took out their democratically elected leader. The U.S. basically arranged a coup, celebrated it. Was, that's all transparent at this point. If you don't have to dig far to get that. Even if you want to look at like democracy now, they'll all say it. But leaders from Ukraine, generals and such, who had like gnarly war crimes, had sought refuge in Israel. So like Israel has had this like relationship with like the leadership of Ukraine for like a while, where it's like
Well, of
as a safe haven.
I mean, the United States has been run by Ukrainian Jews from New York. What's the difference? I feel like at a certain point, you should expect that they're going to be interested in Israel, New York, and Crimea. That's like their
Well, I guess
whole. That's
yeah. I mean, yeah, but you hear like it's convoluted because you have people wanting to take these really, they're like, it's real simple. And then they'll just tell you this thing over this very complex, nuanced situation, but they'll say it's really simple. And they'll just say whatever they think needs to happen in regards to Israel or into regards to Ukraine. But a lot of times those things are at odds. Just like if you look at the protests on the college campuses, how many college campus students that were like protesting pro-Palestine are also like all about gay rights? So they're literally like gays for Palestine, and it's like, do you know what would happen to you if you were in Palestine and it was known that you were gay? Like if you were
yeah.
like it's just they're not treated very well, and it even goes beyond Hamas. It's like literally a cultural divide. So a lot of these things are more like cultural divisions than they are even just political. Like, oh, you belong to this nation, you belong to this nation, and some of that is like completely incompatible. Like they will not reconcile those differences. They're too great. But then you have people in America who want to get behind a cause, and they'd love to just look at it through this lens of equity and just have it be that simple. But unfortunately, it doesn't apply the same way. Like it's just Karpman's triangle. You know what I mean? Where you have to have an oppressor, you have to have the oppressed, and then you have to have the ally, and you're stuck in one of those three positions, and there's nothing else beyond that. And you want to be ally with the right side, and if you're not, then you're not connected to your tribe, and then you feel like you will be an outcast one way or the other, and then you don't want to be ally with the oppressor, right? So it's like it gets so twisted, man.
Well, that's why it's just kind of interesting to me that like you saw that the U.S. is cutting intelligence, CIA director is cutting intelligence sharing with Ukraine, and so to me, the idea that Ukraine and Israel and New York, Washington D.C. are so inextricably tied together, then what's going on with this war in the Ukraine and what are they doing with Russia? Someone was suggesting that it's the new Tartarian Empire, that you've got the West and the East, and the United States is trying to build the Western Hemisphere against the Eastern.
Mm.
Uh, not against, but maybe collectively they understand that they can only control half of the world and the other half of the world needs to exist. And I think that might be true to some extent. And otherwise, what's been going on is the creation of a new world order that is a singularity. And I don't know if that's the inevitable plan, but that might be provoked by getting everything down to two sides and then one of them winning, right?
Right. It's some
Oh,
twisted
it's leaving.
sunk cost to get people to the point that they dislike Donald Trump so much that they'll literally be against a peace deal if it's on the table and a real possibility. So like there's a war that's been happening in Ukraine. Wouldn't it be nice if that ended? If you're against that ending to prove some point about we don't want Trump to be the one to help make that deal happen, that's really bad. Like that does not speak well for anybody who's going to be taking that. So if the mineral deal goes through, like Zelensky said yesterday that he's agreeing to, right? So like that was why he went to that meeting. You know what I mean? That 40-50 minute meeting was specifically like, I mean, there's other factors too, but mainly apparently it was to do this mineral deal. And then Putin comes forward and is like, hey, I'll do the deal if he's not after he leaves the White House flustered. And then now Zelensky's coming back and saying, hey, I want to do the deal. Like I just saw that he said that yesterday. So it's like, you know, wouldn't we want to do that? I mean, we're halting the shipment of all of this military aid, but if if there is a ceasefire, wouldn't that be nice? I mean, I think they want these assurances that we're like, you need to be assured that this won't happen again. Well, if you finish signing the Minsk agreements, like you went in there, advertising, then wouldn't, I mean, when Zelensky was elected on a peace ticket, that was the idea from my understanding. Maybe somebody more knowledgeable can school me, but it looked like there was like a series of these Minsk agreements and that we were kind of like getting to a place where things could actually be reconciled. But him threatening to join NATO was a giant threat to Russia, who we made a deal with back in the 90s that we wouldn't move NATO any further. Like, I think that was under Bill Clinton, right? Like, you won't move NATO further to the east. And now we have all these bases. And if you just look at like where our bases were with Cuba, or where their bases were with Cuba, how close that was to Florida, like we're so much closer and there's so many more. And it's just like, how do we respond? Like, it's just this extreme hypocrisy. So, I mean, say what you will about Putin. He can be a dictator. He can be all these things, sure. But at the same time, like, how would we respond to that if it were us? Like, what do you expect, I guess, is what I'm saying. So maybe we could work with that, maybe.
I mean, you kind of made the point that it's kind of like they've made Trump the foe. I mean, I was thinking about this earlier today because Trump has got this kind of a lot of WWE, WWF, and NWO wrestling connections, and this idea of defeating Kamala. It even started out as Trump defeating a Kamala character, right? There's a super weird.
It's real. It's real. If people don't know about this, they need to know about this. And
Kamala Harris is literally, his last name is Harris, and yeah, everything about it's crazy. But the idea, and he died right before Kamala Harris. But the more sinky thing here is that Trump is a wrestling foe, and what's the value to wrestling? And it seems like more and more bringing the wrestling people into the propaganda circuit, or whatever we're calling the news, because the idea of the world being a wrestling show where there's background drama, and that's the real engagement. We don't even need to see a fight, because you have so much of this Shakespearean drama going on that the fight is really in the words and the emotions that are put into it.
One thing I've thought about a lot, as I mentioned before, I am a big pro wrestling fan, and it's fun to think about philosophically for many reasons, but one of them is the connection between real wrestling and politics. But what I've sort of thought is that maybe the existence of wrestling and everybody watching wrestling is also kind of trained people to see through the political theater a little more, because everybody watches wrestling not because they believe what they're saying, but because they're interested in the background and the behind the scenes stuff.
It's like a men's soap opera, is it not? Like,
yeah,
like you're thinking like Vince McMahon, but we just have honorary McMahon.
I know she's the head of the Department of Education, which is going to be dismantled. So I don't know, whatever. The blending of reality and wrestling is just... People
used to believe wrestling and know how to read before the Department of Education. So I don't know. Maybe we're going back to a kind of.
In the analogy of wrestling, though, there's way more nuance and depth to it. For example, when Ultimate Warrior came out, he was not respected by a lot of the other wrestlers because they saw him as being like all style, no substance. Like he didn't have the actual chops of Greco-Roman wrestling. He didn't know how to do all the specifics. He definitely knew how to put on a show and do the face paint. Like, he got what attracted people at home in the audience and what riled them up. So he was almost seen as this outsider, like, oh, you're not a real fake wrestler like us. Like, we're the
right.
wrestlers. You're a fake.
Yeah.
So I was laughing a second ago because somebody said in the comments that you got a wrestler look to you, Thomas. They're like, you look like
you. That. Thank you. Yeah, I've actually
only one of us that does.
But honestly, I would almost see Donald Trump as Ultimate Warrior in this case, where he shows up and all the politicians are like, wait, you're a fake American. Like, I'm a real fake American, not you. Like, there's this weird, different nuance. It's almost like an old money, new money kind of thing.
Dude, have you guys seen Darren Aronofsky's The Wrestler?
Yes.
Absolutely, yeah. Mickey Rourke, right?
Right. So, but just like in terms of like what the allegory or whatever it is that you're describing, like as far as like wrestling goes and comparing it to politics, like look at what's happening in that movie. That like you literally have somebody that everybody is going to call fake. They're like, you're the fake wrestler, right? But I'm being a little distracted with the noise that I think is typing or something. But that he's sacrificing himself, right? It doesn't kind of like end where he's almost like in the air, like being crucified.
He's about to have a heart attack, essentially. His heart explode. When he
Right,
won.
but it's like everyone's watching a thing and they're going, fake, fake, fake. But everything is on the line for him in a way that it's inconceivable to the audience. Like they don't know, they can't see the other side of this equation. That it on one level it's completely superficial and fake, but at the same time it's just like it's screaming with life and reality in the midst of that. So I think that there's something to be said about that. Like there's a
Yeah.
show.